In the ruins of Warsaw, 1943, a city crushed under German occupation, every weapon seized, every soldier hunted. But inside one bombed-out factory, the sound of gunfire was replaced by the hiss of welding torches. Men and women, mechanics, teachers, machinists, were building weapons from radiators, bicycle chains, and water pipes. Not out of madness, out of survival. The Polish resistance faced an impossible question. How do you fight an army that controls every gun, every bullet, every tank? Their answer: build your own. Scrap metal became barrels. Kitchen knives turned into bayonets. And old radiators, those heavy iron monsters, became multi-barrel cannons. Each spark of a welder's torch was an act of rebellion. Each improvised weapon was proof that ingenuity can fight tyranny. And this wasn't just Warsaw. Across Europe, from Norway to France, and deep into the Pacific jungles, when the factories were gone, innovation became the new weapon of war. In Britain, engineers faced their own crisis. German bombers had destroyed production plants, and the army was running out of weapons. So they designed something revolutionary: the Sten gun. A weapon so simple it could be built in a bicycle shop. A few steel tubes, a spring, a bolt, and you had a fully functional submachine gun. It didn't need fancy machining or expensive materials, just determination and a bit of clever engineering. British engineers smuggled blueprints to occupied Europe, and soon resistance fighters were secretly building Stens in garages, barns, and even basements. Each gun carried a story of defiance, of risk, of freedom. It wasn't the prettiest weapon, but it was the people's gun, and it changed underground warfare forever. Half a world away, in the jungles of the Pacific, cut off from supply lines, Allied soldiers faced the same problem: no weapons, no artillery. So they turned the island's abandoned water pipes into mortars. They cut, welded, and balanced these makeshift cannons by hand, using scrap steel, naval shell casings, and anything explosive they could find. Some of these pipe mortars were so effective that later military manuals actually documented them as emergency weapons for soldiers trapped behind enemy lines. In the Pacific heat, with nothing but jungle and wreckage, soldiers discovered the raw essence of engineering: pressure, leverage, and precision born from necessity. In the bombed-out cities of Europe, factories were silent but not empty. Among the rubble, resistance fighters found chemicals, fertilizers, and metal scraps, and learned to turn them into explosives. By mixing industrial compounds, fuel oil, and metal shavings, they created homemade charges powerful enough to take down tanks or bridges. They built timers from clocks and detonators from electric circuits. They weren't chemists. They were ordinary people who learned that knowledge could be more dangerous than gunpowder. These crude explosives taught entire generations the principles of controlled force, concepts still used today in demolition and mining. Deep in the forests of Belarus and Ukraine, Soviet partisans faced another challenge: how to strike armored columns with nothing but farm equipment. Their answer? Turn the farms into factories. Old tractors were reinforced to mount salvaged tank guns. Truck beds became mobile rocket launchers. Even plows were disguised as weapon carriers, able to fire, retreat, and vanish among the fields. When German convoys rolled through the countryside, they never expected the farmer on the hill to fire a 76mm gun from his tractor. That's not fiction. That's innovation. Soviet style. Meanwhile, in occupied France, assassins walked the streets carrying weapons no one could see. The French underground perfected the art of silence, building crossbows, spring-loaded darts, and compressed air pistols from spare parts and plumbing supplies. These one-shot devices could fit in a coat pocket and were deadly at close range. They were tools of survival and resistance. The engineering behind them, energy storage, air compression, trigger mechanisms, still teaches us how precision devices control power through simplicity. In the mountains of Italy, partisans found a new weapon: the railways themselves. Railroad tracks were cut, shaped, and welded into anti-tank charges. Rail spikes became shrapnel. Steel rails became armor-piercing launchers. It was raw, brutal engineering. But it worked. German convoys moving through narrow passes suddenly vanished in clouds of molten steel. The Italians had turned their own infrastructure into a weapon. Behind the violence was a lesson every engineer knows. The best material is the one already in your hands. Far north, in the frozen wilderness of Norway, resistance fighters faced not only the Germans, but nature itself. They built explosives hidden inside ski poles and timing mechanisms inside climbing harnesses. Their sabotage missions required perfect timing, often in temperatures that froze metal solid. Yet, their designs never failed. They mastered cold weather mechanics long before the modern world caught up, inventing techniques still used today in Arctic engineering and outdoor survival equipment. Across every front, improvised weapons turned the tide of history, not because they were powerful, but because they proved that knowledge is the ultimate weapon. From plumbing pipes to pressure systems, from bicycle gears to ballistics, World War II became the greatest engineering classroom in human history. Every invention, every failure, taught us how to build smarter, faster, simpler. Today, those same principles shape the tools we use in factories, in rescue missions, and even in space exploration. When the guns fell silent, the factories of war didn't disappear. They simply changed shape. Because in every crisis, every shortage, every impossible situation, someone, somewhere, will always find a way to build something that works. That's the story of human survival. That's the legacy of those who built weapons from scrap. They didn't just fight a war. They redefined what it means to create under pressure. If this story gave you a new respect for the inventors hidden in history's shadows, subscribe to Forgotten Survival, where we explore how human ingenuity shapes the world, one forgotten invention at a time.